Good morning and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing live. I'm Tony Haggerty at the Haggerty10 on the Twitter handle, and I'm delighted to be joined by Ryan McGinley at the Ryan McGinley on the Twitter handle. Ryan, Celtic maintained their perfect start to the season. Aberdeen 0, Celtic 2, goals from Benjamin Nigren, his first goal for the club, and a corker from Rio Hatate, all 3 points heading back down the road to Glasgow. Ryan, I was there and I thought Celtic exercised an element of control over that game without hitting great heights or dizzy heights. But your own thoughts on that? What did you think of that game? Were you pleased with the performance?
I've got to actually agree with Chris Boyd, and I can't believe I'm saying this to start a morning briefing, but they didn't get out of second gear yesterday at all. It was complete and utter control for most of the 90 minutes. Yes, they had a couple of hairy moments, but I think Celtic's defence in particular, there's a couple of names in particular that really stood out at the back and kept Aberdeen quiet when required. But for the most part, I thought it was utter domination from Celtic. You know, Pittodrie, as much as the record says that Celtic are really good at Pittodrie, you find more often than not that they're difficult games. Yet that was one of the easier games against Jimmy Tilleen's side. They've got 0 points out of 6. Celtic have got 6 points out of 6 and maintain a perfect start to the season. And yeah, it's just all about putting points on the board at this moment in time. As much as I don't want to be a cliche, it's all about putting those points on the board. Celtic have done that and have got 6 points out of 6.
18 unbeaten at Pittodrie, Ryan. There were 17 before yesterday and they stretched that run to 18. Haven't lost there since Ronnie Dyler's team lost 2-1, I think, 2016. So it's a fairly decent record. Now, 2 goal scorers, Ryan, both midfielders, but I think we'll talk about Benjamin Nigren. I'm sure you were very impressed, like I was, with Nigren's run into the box and finish. But yeah, we're hoping that he can be that player for Celtic. Myself and John McGinley spoke about that in the pre-match show, and we were delighted to see that came to fruition as he stole in. But I said to Brendan Rodgers yesterday, I don't think Kieran Tierney's assist can be overlooked. I thought it was a brilliant cross. It just sets it up perfectly for Nigren to run on and volley it home.
It makes the goal completely, in my opinion. It's Kieran Tierney's. He's got some elite qualities in his game, and that is definitely one of them. That whole movement from Tierney to beat his man and then to put the ball into the box. That's just vintage Tierney. That's what he was doing at Pittodrie in his first stint at Celtic. A delicious chip into Benjamin Nigren. It's a good finish, but I think it's made by the chip. I was watching it yesterday on the TV, and I was saying to the person that I was watching it with, that ball is just dying to be attacked by Benjamin Nigren. It's put on a plate for him, and he can get used to that because he'll get that sort of service from Kieran Tierney. I thought it was a well-worked goal from start to finish. Good pass out from Scales, out to Tierney, good ball into the box from Tierney, and a great first-time finish from Benjamin Nigren. And I think that'll be the first of many because he just looks like a guy that picks up good areas. He should have scored his first goal a couple of weeks ago against St Mirren if it wasn't for a great save from Shamal George. But he's opened his account. He scored a lot of goals for Midtjylland. For Nordjylland rather, and I expect him to do the same for Celtic this season because he picks up good areas and he seems to already be one of those players that Brendan Rodgers can rely on, hence the reason why he's been on both teams.
38th assist for Kieran Tierney over 2 spells, 172 games. It's averaging an assist every 4.5 games, Ryan. But once he gets fully up to speed, I expect those numbers to rise as well because he had a cracking assist in the pre-season friendly against Newcastle, but I thought Tierney, up until he went off, was a cut above quality player.
Yeah, and we heard a little bit from Brendan Rodgers after the game saying that he was sick at half time, so they gave him 15 minutes before taking him off. I think that's him just getting used to the rigours of playing of playing first team football. Again, Brendan Rodgers was quick to say that he's had a period where he's not been playing a lot of football, a lot of regular football. From that to playing every week for Celtic is going to be difficult for him, but you're seeing game by game he's getting sharper and sharper. Not just his attacking play, but his defensive 1v1s. I thought he kept Aberdeen's winger really quiet on the day, and he was one of the players that stood out to me when Aberdeen played Hearts. He was probably one of their only decent players at Tynecastle on Monday. I think it's Milenkovic or something like, or Markovic. I'll need to double check his name, but he kept him really quiet on the day, and that was great to see. He can do both. He's a good attacker, but he's also a really good 1v1 defender, and you've seen those qualities in abundance yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Brendan Rodgers had this to say about Kieran Tierney. That's what his super strength is. He's really good in that 1v1 moment where he has explosive speed, and his crossing ability is really good. We saw it last week against St Mirren when he put some great balls into the box, but he didn't quite get the goal. He did well to even come out for the second half. He was just sick at half time, and he was thrown up all over the changing room. Thankfully, I wasn't in there at the time. We gave him a few 15 minutes or so, and then took him off. He's a top player who's only going to get fitter, stronger and better. I agree with that wholeheartedly, Ryan. But on Nygren, Rodgers was also full of praise for Nygren, and this is what he said about Nygren. He says, he was excellent. He was man of the match, wasn't he? It's the reason we brought him in. He's a player that can play as an 8 or a 10 or off the side, but his intuition is to get into the box and score goals. That's why we brought him in. The first goal was great, how we worked it side to side and then penetrated through the middle with him making the run. Kieran Tierney shows his quality, beats his man, crosses, and Benjamin finishes it well. Overall, I thought he did well. I think most Celtic supporters were impressed by Benjamin Nygren, weren't they, Ryan?
I think he passes the eye test, Tony. He's much like a player that also scored on the day in Rio Hatate. Of course, I was going to mention him, wasn't I, Tony? But yeah, it's not just what he does, in the final third when he's scoring goals like that. I also seen a different side of him. I seen that he can play passes. He also gets the assist for Rio Hatate's goal and the second goal of the game. So he get 2 goal contributions, a goal and an assist. That's really good play from him. That's what's expected of a number 8 or a number 10 at Celtic. Celtic tend to play with 2 number 8s, but they are expected to get goals and assists and add to the tally, and he's done that. He did that yesterday with real prestige and that goal and assist that he picked up. Yeah, it's not just that though. I think his passing is crisp. He wins fouls in good areas as well. There was a moment where I don't think there was a lot of contact, but he seemed to not con the referee, but it looked as if he made it look as if he got a foul more than I think the foul was there. That's going to be important for Celtic in the Champions League or whatever European competition that they're playing in, winning fouls in good areas. He keeps hold of the ball really well too, and yeah, I'm excited to see what he can bring to this team. I mean, if this is him only 2 games into the season, what's it going to be like 20 games into the season? The future looks good with Nygren in green and white for sure.
Certainly that wee shunt into Hatate, I really liked that, Ryan.
It was quick, it was incisive.
Yeah, and he's played him into space. He's, that vision to see Hatate in space, and then Hatate has supplied a cracking finish. I said yesterday, this August goal of the month. I don't think you'll see a better one. Although they were talking about the youngster at Hibs who scored yesterday.
Yeah. Maybe Celtic goal of the month. I think he's get tied up. But I think the Hibs boy that scored yesterday, or the player that scored yesterday in that Hibs game versus Kilmarnock, has probably wrapped that up. It was an absolute screamer that he scored.
To be fair, it was a decent strike, but yeah, well, I still think Hatate's is better. They get going in off the underside of the bar always looks good. John McGinley was talking about that yesterday. He likes a shot that goes in off the underside of the bar. I think we all do. But yeah, obviously Hatate, excuse me, showing his quality and class is still there, Ryan. You never lose it, do you?
No, I don't think he had the greatest game yesterday, and I thought it was a funny moment as well when he was coming off. He was kind of asking Rodgers and Kennedy why he was getting brought off, but I think they were quick to remind him that he just picked up a booking and it's all about game management at that point, which was good to see from Rodgers and Kennedy respectively. I think he was talking about it after the match to Kennedy too, in one of the pictures between the two individuals. So that was good to see, and it's good to see that he's really on board with everything that's happening at Celtic. For me, it's been a bit of an added bonus not hearing any transfer speculation as of yet for Rio Hatate. Obviously, we've still got a little bit of the month, well, or most of the month of August to go, but right now there's been nothing for him, and he looks locked in and ready for this season. He looks concentrated. He looked good in pre-season. I thought he was the standout player of pre-season. He had a decent game last week, had an okay game this week, but he's still contributing. Even if he's not having an outstanding game, he's still coming up in those big moments, and he did that. He did that yesterday. You just knew when he'd hit that ball that it was going in the back of the net, and it was very aesthetically pleasing to hit the underside of the bar and go into the back of the net. So yeah, good for him, pleased for him. Big smile on his face when he scored as well. All his teammates were enjoying it, and yeah, it was a good contribution by Rio Hatate on the day.
Now, Ryan, we have to address I called it the green and white elephant in the room. Celtic badly need reinforcements. As much as they were in control of the game yesterday, I think we still need certain players in certain positions, and the one position that is crying out for Celtic is an attacker, a new striker. And I asked Brendan Rodgers about Adam Idah yesterday. I said, you kept faith with him, and he said yes, but this is what he said about Adam Idah. It's quite interesting. I said, you kept faith with Adam Idah today. Do you feel a bit for him, and how do you assess his situation and the mood music surrounding him? And his opening line was, we need to reinforce the top line. We are structurally in our defensive numbers from our back line to midfield. We have a squad that can cope domestically and in European competition. I'm pleased with that aspect. However, I think we need competition at the top end of the field. For Adam, he's a big, honest boy. He was at his best here when he was really challenging with Kyogo for the position, and that's something that is important for us to get. In the meantime, he'll work hard, and he will always be that reference for us. But as a striker at Celtic, you have to be strong mentally, and you have got to score goals. I have a lot of faith in him, but he really needs that competition beside him. That's when you'll then get the most out of him. He didn't score, but he worked very hard, gave us all, and he'll get better as the season goes on. Interesting thoughts there, Ryan, from the manager.
Yeah, for the first time, I think he's mentioned that he needs reinforcements in the striking area, because he's been talking about the forward line quite a bit, but yesterday was the first time that he really mentioned that Adam Idah needs competition up front in order to get the best out of him. So for me, that's an admittance that strikers are required. A striker is required to challenge the Irishman. Yesterday, it's not through a lack of trying, because I could see him genuinely working hard, trying to make things happen on the ball. Maybe it's a case of him trying too hard, but I just felt there was a lot of mistakes in his game yesterday. And yes, the crosshairs are on him. Everybody's talking about Adam Idah at the moment because he's the main player to focus on. There's a lot of money being spent on Idah. That's not his fault, but a lot of eyes are on him because he hasn't scored this season yet. I know there's only 2 games gone, but there's pressure on him. And I think he's playing like a player that is under pressure, and he knows he's under pressure to perform this season. It's a really important season for him in his career, never mind just at Celtic, because he needs to really hammer down that position. Brendan Rodgers, I liked the way that he tackled it, but I just wonder if the comments are maybe different behind closed doors with Idah, that he needs to improve and improve quickly, otherwise he could find himself on the bench.
Yeah, and the irony is, Ryan, he mentioned that spell that he had when he was challenging Kyogo for the position. And it is, during that loan spell that he had, Ryan, he get, what did he get? 9 goals and 2 assists. He played 19 games. And since he's signed, he's played 55 games, he's scored 20, and he's got 1 assist. So, those 2 spells are pretty stark, aren't they? If you're going to compare and contrast.
Yeah, it doesn't make for great reading, and then it adds a little bit of a narrative that, right, you were playing for a move, you were playing for a permanent move, and maybe you've got comfortable. I'm not saying that's the case with him. I'm just saying that's the narrative that could come about with Adam Idah. I want him to do well because Celtic have spent a lot of money on him. He seems like a really decent guy off the pitch. I just want him to kick on and show that. I mean, you and I were at Kilmarnock. We were at Rugby Park when he had that brilliant performance where he looked outstanding on the night that Celtic clinched the league, Rodgers' first league since coming back as Celtic manager. And we were in no doubt that we wanted Adam Idah signed for the following season, which turned out to be the case. Yes, he scored 20 goals, but how many of those goals... I know he scored big goals, and I've made this point so many times. How many of those goals were winners? You know, how many of those were big goals? There were sometimes the third goal in a 4-0 win, scoring the fifth goal, the last goal of the game. Yes, he scored that against Aston Villa. Yes, he scored against Rangers. He also had that intervention against Young Boys, which was important, which wasn't a goal, but it was every bit as good because he pressured the player into putting the ball into the back of his own net. We just need to see results now. We need to see the numbers. We need to see more from him. But in order to do that, I think Brendan Rodgers will either need Shin Yamada to step up and be that second option, or potentially first option and put the pressure on him, or bring in somebody in the remaining 3.5 weeks of the transfer window. In my opinion, I think it'll be the latter, and I think that Celtic will look to bring another striker in. I guess that's my hope as well, because it's an area that badly needs reinforcements. But I would also say that the whole forward line needs reinforcements, not just up front. There needs to be one, maybe two. In fact, I probably would go towards the latter and say 2 wingers need to come into the club this summer.
Well, Celtic can add 2 before Thursday. That's the Champions League qualifying squad deadline, Ryan, if they want to. And Brendan Rodgers was asked, was he confident that competition would arrive before Thursday? And he said, I really don't know at this point. For us, it's something we know we need to do. But in the meantime, we'll work with the players that are here until our reinforcements arrive. That didn't sound like a man who was about to dip into the transfer market and, before the 14th of August and get that player and get that reinforcement that he badly needs for the Champions League qualifier.
No, and it's concerning because he said the same things on Friday as well. He says he wasn't sure, so it means that from Friday to Sunday, I know that's a short amount of time, but it can be a long time in football. It means that nothing's further forward from when he last spoke to the media to post-match against Aberdeen. Now, you would have hoped that things are moving in the background and maybe they just don't want to talk about it yet, that there's bids getting put in for players. Players can maybe come into the club and make a difference. But it's the 11th of August. Yes, they've still got time to register players, and yes, they can put in a couple of wild cards before the first leg, which is good, but I don't want Celtic to be relying on that reality. I want them to have the players in beforehand. Unfortunately, it looks as if that will be the case, and they'll have to be brought in and immediately make an impact. They might not even start the game, but they might have to come off the bench and make an impact if there is any new players that come in. But I don't want Celtic gambling with this Champions League tie. Yes, Kairat are up 1-0 against Slovan Bratislava. I don't know how that second leg is going to go, but it will be a challenge regardless of who Celtic play, and you want them to be as best equipped as possible for what lies ahead. Because for me, yes, domestic football is important, but you're not going to get many bigger games than this, or many that, in terms of a tie, there won't be a bigger tie for Celtic this season than getting into the Champions League proper. It's so important in terms of keeping the fans interested, in terms of the finances coming into the club, in terms of what you can offer players that are incoming as well. I just think it's so important that Celtic get the business done and go into that game as prepared as possible. But unfortunately, as we stand right now, I don't think they are as well prepared as what we would have liked.
If nobody arrives before that Champions League squad deadline on the 14th of August, Ryan, is there jeopardy in that tie, or do you think Celtic will comfortably get through it regardless of the opposition that they play?
I think regardless, if they were to bring in 5 or 6 players, I would still say there's a certain element of jeopardy in the tie, because it's a knockout tie and anything can happen. In these games, you could have a terrible first leg and then you're really on the back foot for the second leg. So many different scenarios can play out in these Champions League qualifiers, and I think Celtic have been through every single one over the course of the last 10, 15 years. Yes, they haven't needed to qualify in recent years, but you look at the different stories that they've had. You know, the likes of Karagandhi, Hapoel Beersheva as well. So many I can name. Then some of the negative ones: AEK Athens, Ferencváros, Cluj. You know, there's so many examples that you can point to as being different scenarios that happened during the game, whether it was a terrible first leg and a comeback in the second, hanging on in the second leg to make sure that you get through. For me, I don't think they're as prepared as what I would have liked. They still have players that should be able to go and do the business, because the vast majority of them were in the Champions League squad last season for Celtic when they beat the likes of Slovan Bratislava 5-1. I know they've lost Nicholas Kuhn, but you know, apart from that, most of the players are still present at the club. So there's always going to be jeopardy in these ties, but I'd rather there was as little jeopardy as possible, and that would mean more signings.
In an ideal world, Ryan, Celtic would be well prepared, and those signings would be in the door right now. But we don't live in an ideal world, and it's Celtic during a transfer window. But I've been banging on about it for a long time that the most important game Celtic will play this season is the Champions League qualifier doubleheader. Don't want to stress the importance of that anymore. But listen, they have a couple of days to maybe try and add a couple of wild cards. Failing that, they have until September the 3rd to make sure their squad is prim and proper and ready to attack all competitions with gusto. Anything else take your eye yesterday, Ryan, in terms of the performance?
Just going through it in my head, I'm looking at all the different aspects of the game. I thought yesterday was a real return. And I know it's only been 2 games, but yesterday was a real showcase of how important Cameron Carter-Vickers is to that back line. And there was a moment in particular in the first half where he made a tremendous double tackle. He makes a tackle and then he's on the ground, but he still manages to make the second tackle to stop the counter-attack, because if he doesn't do that, then Aberdeen are pretty much through on goal. He's one of the last lines of defence, apart from Kasper Schmeichel. He's the next one, but he stopped the move from happening twice. I thought he was just imperious yesterday. I know that's expected of Carter-Vickers. For me, he's right up there with the likes of Virgil van Dijk in terms of the best defender I've ever seen at Celtic in my time of watching the club. But he's just so important to everything that Celtic do. Celtic's success and long-term success will largely lie on the fact if Cameron Carter-Vickers can stay fit the full season, because they just look a different team when he's in that starting lineup in the back line. I'm looking forward and I'm quite excited to see how Jemai Simpson-Pusey fits into the side. But I also want to give some credit to Austin Trusty, who for the second game in a row really calmed things down at the back, and I think Liam Scales actually looked more comfortable when he went out to left back as well later on in the game. But he was very sloppy in possession, Scales, for a lot of that game. 3 or 4 real unforced errors that put Celtic into perilous positions, or could have done if Aberdeen had an attacking outlet, which they didn't seem to have on the day. But when Trusty came on, I thought there was an element of calm that came into the game, and that was good to see. I don't know what his future lies, if he'll be happy with his current setup of coming off the bench in the second half. I know he'll want to probably start games, but I thought he done himself justice. He did himself justice against Aberdeen yesterday, like he did against St Mirren the first day of the season.
Yeah, I thought Scales on the whole was solid, but his distribution at times it's the one Achilles. Well, sometimes he's also prone to lapses in concentration. And those 2 things for me, are always why I'm never entirely convinced about Scales. I think sometimes there's a rickets in him, and also his passing should be so much better because he sees a lot of the ball. And you're not talking. I'm not talking being Ronald Koeman here, Ryan. I'm talking about 7-8 yard passes to the left or to the right, and particularly in the first half, I noticed it. A couple of passes went awry, didn't they?
Yeah, but he takes it upon himself to play out from the back. I'd say, well, looking at the stats that we had last season, Scales was making a lot of those passes at the back. I think he was Celtic's top passer. I know those passes maybe go 6 yards or 2-3 yards to the nearest player, but he's still passing the ball to the midfielders or his fellow defenders. Or to some of the wingers in some points. I remember in particular a pass that he had at Hampden that really cut open the St Johnstone defence on the day. He takes that upon himself, which makes him a target, unfortunately, if those passes go awry. But yeah, I thought yesterday was one of his poorer games in possession, but I will say that he looked more comfortable once he moved to left back. It's an interesting area, left back at the moment, Tony, because Inamura didn't get named on the bench yesterday for the second game in a row, and it was Liam Scales that shifted over to the left once Kieran Tierney came off the park. Like what we spoke about last week, you would suggest that there's still business to be done there. There's a left back to come in to complement Kieran Tierney, and I think there is a world where an inverted fullback could be so effective for Celtic. I know that's a specialist position, but there was positions that, and it might even bring out the best in Daizen Maeda as well, because giving him that space to run down the wing, whereas Kieran Tierney likes to do the same as Daizen Maeda and get to the byline and put balls into the box, to have that difference in left backs could be important for Celtic this season. So I hope that's one of the areas that they're looking at.
Also, as well, Ryan, we'll maybe talk about this in a podcast during the week, but very telling for me, Ingles got 12 minutes, Luke McCowan got 12 minutes, Bernardo got no minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's, in that game after the second goal had gone in on the 67th minute was pretty safe, wasn't it? I would have thought, I would, when the scoreline went to 2-0, I thought, right, that's Celtic home and hosed here. But as I say, Engels and Bernardo seem to be down that pecking order and maybe need to do something. As I say, we'll maybe address that in a separate podcast, but I just wanted to get your initial thoughts on that.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? But Nygren has contributed to this because he's essentially just walked into the first team, and you can't exactly drop him now that he's got two goal contributions in 2 games. Obviously, the 2 coming against Aberdeen at Pittodrie. It's the midfield's such a difficult position to talk about because Callum McGregor's got that number 6 position on lock, essentially. He's always going to play there unless there's a little bit of rotation in the side. And when Rio Hatate is scoring goals from outside the box and having an overall positive influence on the game, then where's the space for these players to come in? Luke McCowan had to make an impact off the bench, but yet that wasn't enough to give him a starting spot against Aberdeen. So if the player that scores the winner against St Mirren can't get into the first team or get into the starting 11 for the next game, what chance have the likes of Engels and Bernardo got? It's great to know that squad depth is there in the midfield, but I can't help but think that those 2 in particular will not be happy with the way that their season started, with the fact that they're sitting on the bench and some of them are getting hardly any minutes whatsoever. You could actually say that about the both of them. I know Bernardo didn't come off the bench, but even Engels' game time is very, very limited at the moment. It's certainly an area to keep an eye on. I want to see Engels in particular succeed because Celtic spent a lot of money on him. Bernardo too, because he had that good loan spell in his first season on loan from Benfica. But at the moment, they're on the outside looking in. Maybe that Falkirk game is a good game to rotate the side and see those players in action and really give them an opportunity to shine in the first team, because at the moment, like I said, they're on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think Nygren's thrown down that gauntlet, hasn't he, Ryan? Immediate
impact, Tony. Yeah, and that's what you want to see from a new signing, and it's a positive for Celtic. But you've got to you look at the other side as well, and you look at these players, especially for the good amount of money that you've brought them in for, £11 million. You're always going to talk about that with Arne Engels because he was the record signing, and that's always going to be labelled on him. The same for Idah with the price tag. You want to see him do well, but at the moment, he's got. I know he's Swedish, but he's got the yellow jersey for Celtic, as you say.
Correct. He has got the yellow jersey, and he is running with it and running with it very well. to be fair. But Celtic win 2-0. Ryan, keep up their 100% record and start to the season. And I know it's a small thing, but their main challengers for the title will probably be Rangers, but that's a 4-point gap opened up. And with Rangers postponing their next league game because of their European endeavours, there is a chance Celtic could be heading to Ibrox to go 10 points clear. I mean, that would be something incredible if that eventuality was to become a reality, but don't want to get too ahead of yourself, but it's something that I think is probably not important per se, but Celtic have built up a lead here now, haven't they?
They are, and I think it's so important for Celtic to just keep on putting the points on the board. Just allow these games, and I'm already delighted that Celtic chose not to postpone that game against Livingston, because I think that would actually be quite detrimental, having just a week's break. I think this team needs minutes in its legs, and it could be a good opportunity to bring the likes of Bernardo, Engels, Shin Yamada into the side and rotate and get as much minutes as possible for these players, even from the outside looking in. You've got to play these games eventually. That's the thing. You're going to have to play these games, so it's better playing them now and getting the points on the board. Obviously, we've still got to go and win the game against Livingston, and Livingston, by all accounts, have had a really good start to the season. 4 points out of 6. So far, it's only Celtic and Hearts that have got an 100% record in the league. So it would seem that a load of teams are getting used to maybe new managers, a new style of play, but for Celtic, that familiarity is definitely suiting them at the moment. 2 wins out of 2. The next game that Rangers play in the league would be Celtic if they get through against Victoria Pilsen, which I think everybody's expecting after the first leg. That's a big one. There's automatically pressure. There's pressure in every Glasgow derby, but there's even more pressure going into that with the way that Rangers have started the season and the fact that they got their Giga sent off in the last game against Dundee. He would miss the game against Celtic, which by all accounts is a massive blow for them, because I think he's been one of their better signings so far this season. So it's an interesting dynamic that's going on early doors in the Scottish Premiership, but it's one that suits Celtic to a T at the moment.
Yeah, because there's a great chance to build up some momentum, Ryan, and it will get
and we've
better.
seen that momentum's a big thing, and I hate to hark back to the 2020-21 season, but when Celtic get games postponed, they didn't see those games until later on in the season, so they were always playing catch up. It's time the shoe's on the other foot, and you put that pressure on your opponents to have those games in hand and really put the pressure on. Celtic can only apply that pressure by winning the games that they play, but as of right now, they're doing that, so more of the same, please.
The manager calls it scoreboard pressure, Ryan. We will see what scoreboard pressure is applied in the fullness of time. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there. We'll talk about Celtic more tomorrow at the same time. Probably maybe dig deeper into Arne Engels and Paulo Bernardo, Ryan. See where they go from here. But thank you for joining us, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Ryan, thanks for joining us. Stellar contribution again. 6 points out of 6 at the minute, Ryan.
Perfect. Yep. More to come for sure, but a good start to the season with the cup to come.
Excellent.
Cheers, guys.
We shall see you tomorrow at the same time. Take care.
Thanks, guys. See you later.